since you are telling me that I should have told you about the hackathon, let me actually mention at least one other thing, which is not this guy. This guy. Yeah. This is the hackathon that you didn't come to. Besides that, there is this stuff, networking with recruiters, which is on Thursday from 6 to 8. I would say definitely come and see what happens, right? Chances are you're not yet at the level of getting a job, but who knows? And having the email of a recruiter, or having the recruiter having your email, right, is a good idea, right? Plus, there is free food or something like that. So I would say definitely come to this one. The other one that I wanted to see is not this, not this, not this. This other thing, let me mention this. We will be hosting a piece of a programming competition from CCSE, and I think they are making training sessions. I see the poster outside. Go program, right? You should be trying to program as much as you can. Maybe you cannot solve those problems, but you sit next to people who do, right? And then maybe not participate in the contest, but at least go to the training sessions and do more programming. And then the other one is Linux workshops. They are free.
Will they show you how to install it? Because I tried to make like a flash drive install and yeah.
I'm coming and being with people who are should. Right, come. They did an install fest a couple of weeks ago, and if you want, we can do that. Yeah.
I tried installing when my kernel started panicking or something. I don't know what that means, but like Google, that's what
It's a blue screen of that.
Yeah.
The equivalent of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you should be able to either run it on your laptop or run VMware or something like that on your laptop and run it under VMware or Docker or all of those things. It is always a good idea to know everything. For the most part, most of our students are familiar with Windows and not with Linux. So definitely learn Linux, right? If it was the other way, I would be telling you, go learn Windows, right? But very few people come and only use Unix and haven't used Windows. The Mac is similar-ish to Windows sometimes. If you open the terminal, then you get Bash. It's similar to Windows, but if you have a chance, come to some, come to all of them. We do have sessions from ALE here, which is cool. So come to as many of those things as you can. Okay. So now let's talk about race. Up to now, we have only been doing things with one. We can have an object, and an object may have several fields, but it's one. Many times, we want to have a bunch of things, a bunch of objects, a bunch of ints, a bunch of whatever, and that also gives us a lot more things to play with. The most basic way of having a bunch in Java or in most programming languages is by having an array. An array is a fixed type collection of objects, all of the same type. We denote array types with the square brackets after the base type. Arrays in Java have a property, length, which tells you the number of elements in the array, and a special operator, square bracket, which gives you a given element from the array. So let me start with Java REPL. I can declare an integer variable, right? Int a equals 3. I can also do int array a equals, an array is an object, so I need to initialize it with new. Well, actually, I could probably do this. Work? Yay! In Java REPL, I can change the type of my variables, not in Java, but and now a is an array. It contains 3 integers, right? It's an array of ints. I cannot have ints and floats and strings and things like that.
Is an array the same as a set, or similar, or?
It is similar, but what's a set in math?
Well, I know like the location of each of the elements in there.
In math, a set cannot have duplicates, and it doesn't have order. Yeah. An array could have duplicates and does have order. One is the first element of the array. Let me do this. Let's do 20, 30, 10. So it can have duplicates, and it actually, the order is important. Okay. So I can do a.length, and length is a property, a field, right? So what would this return? 4 now, right? 4.
Start from 0. Oh, 3. 4.
If the length is 4, I have 4 elements, right? Now, I can refer to those elements. The first element is element number 0. You remember when they taught you how to count in elementary school? They lied to you. We count 0, 1, 2, 3. In computers, we count 0, 1, 2, 3.
So if we have length, we have like we go like a car app kind of for this?
Yes, it's square brackets. So a square bracket 0 would give me the first element in the array, which in this case is what? 10. A of 1. Does that make sense? How can I add up all the elements in this array or something like that? I can use a for loop, and normally you would see for loops like this. Maybe it will actually work in Java REPL. No. Never mind. Oh, it did. Just didn't do a thing. Yeah. It did it, right? It added up all the elements in the array, right? And normally you would see stuff for int I equals 0, I less than your array.length, plus plus I, and then you do stuff with a of I. Whatever that stuff is. Does this make sense? You can create an array by either using this notation only on initialization, use the braces and then the numbers, or an array is an object, so you can do a equals new int of 10. And so now that initialized to 10 elements. they all happen to be 0 in Java. Does that make sense? You know all there is to know about arrays. Well, yes-ish. Then we need to combine it in horrible ways. Let me go through and making sure that we are doing.
When you initialize it with 10, did you give a value of 0, or is that 0 kind of like null? 'cause there's no value?
Well, it's int, so they cannot be null,
Okay.
right? So they become 0.
Okay.
Right? It's an int, so it has to be a value, has to have a value, and Java will initialize stuff to 0. Java will initialize integers or integrals, numberish things to 0, and object things to null.
So I assume you could have characters in an array as well? Or
I could do. Well, what happens if I do this? Bah! It complains. Should complain.
aren't you telling it can be characters, but you're putting ints inside then? I mean,
Yeah, I hope that that's the problem. Yes. Incompatible types. Now, I could do. And so I can do a. Didn't do anything. Yeah, it didn't really do it. So let's do it in a real thing. I'll probably print some unprintable stuff. Yes. That square means I don't have a font to display that character, right? I don't have a character in my font because this is the character with ASCII 0. Right? So I could do stuff like for int I equals 0, I less than c dot length, what would this do, right? I initialize to 10 spaces, right, my array of characters, and then I go through all of those spaces, right, and do C of I equals the character 0, not the number 0, plus I, so that'll give me the character 0, then the character 1, then the character 2, right? And I make C of I to be that thing. Now, when you add up two integers, you get an int, so you need to cast it back into a car. And so now C of 0 will be the actual ASCII code for 0, which prints as 0. Does this make sense? In Java, strings are not arrays of characters, are other things. So an array of characters is very similar to a string, but it's not a string.
But in other languages it is?
Yes. What else would it be? Maybe. I don't even know. I think in C++ it is a subclass of array of characters. Maybe. No, it's not. But in other languages it is. In fact, some languages don't even have a character class. It's just a string of one. But does this make some sense for arrays? We can declare arrays like this, and actually you can do it like this, and it is the exact same thing. We can initialize our array with new, and new is not just initialization, right? It's just new actually creates a new array of 10 characters, and so you can assign it to an array variable, or we could do something like this, right? What would this print? Hello, vertically, right? In a bunch of lines. Does this make sense? Because I'm doing print line. So I print the letter C, then a new line. If I do
Just print.
this, does this make sense? I can declare like this. I can initialize. Only on initialization, I can also do this.
So you'd have to reinitialize to.
I cannot reinitialize. Only when I'm declaring and initializing
Okay.
that those braces work. They, yeah, Java is weird.
See.
Like, I can do it here,
Yeah.
but I cannot do this again. It complains about syntax. Why? Because sometimes Java is dumb. Those braces for initializing can only be done when you're declaring a variable. At least as of Java 8. I don't know what they did in Java 9. Java 9 just came out, but I haven't really played with it.
So after you declare the variable, if you just want to like insert values into that variable, you have to use a loop or some algorithm or something.
Yes,
You can't just
yes.
say it's that. Okay.
Yes. And keep in mind that you can't really insert values. If an array is 10 spaces, it has 10 spaces. That's it. It will never have 11. You cannot make it grow to 11. You cannot shrink it to 5. The array will always have 10.
Is there a special like thing you have to load for these for?
No. Arrays are basic standard Java. They're super basic.
There's no way to change the length of an array?
No, not of an array.
Okay.
We will see, just so you know, we will talk about arrays this week, or it's actually next week. The assignment for arrays will be due next Sunday. So we'll talk Wednesday and Monday about arrays. Then we will go back to classes and we'll talk about inheritance and collections of objects and things like that, arrays of objects deeper. And then we'll go look at other collections that are not arrays. Like there's actually a set collection, there is a vector or an array list, and those things can grow and shrink and things like that. But the basic arrays cannot. In fact, those things use arrays in their implementation, but arrays are a basic feature of Java. So we can create them, we can initialize them. We can ask their length. And sometimes the Java standard libraries look like if they were created by a bunch of different interns with ADD because they were very inconsistent. For arrays, they have a field called length. Other things have a method called length, and other things have a method called size. But arrays have a field called length. And this you have to memorize, right? In order to access an element, we can use the square brackets operator, and it starts at 0, right? We can assign values to the elements of an array with the same notation, right? Arrays are objects. So when we pass an array as a parameter to a function, the variable gets copied, but the object doesn't get copied. You get a reference to that object, so you can't change elements inside the array. So let's go play. And for the most part, what we do with arrays is do for loops to do stuff, right? To the elements of an array. So this would be a way of printing the array. Printing each element in a separate line. We'll be using print line, right? And so we could do, delete this stuff now. So let's see. Let's create init array we are going to initialize every element in the array starting at low and going up by step. Does that make sense? So we would start at 0 length, and so we would here, instead of printing, what do? We need to assign a value to the element I. So how do we refer to the element I? Array of I equals, okay, what's that something? Low plus I times step. Does this make sense? So if I call start at 10 and go by 2s, right? This would initialize to 10, 12, 14, and so on, right? So I can call print array. Scroll this. Yes.
Why isn't it multiplied by I times
So that you go, right? When I is 0, you're going to make it low. When I is 1, you're going to make it low plus. In our case, where we had 10 and 2, right? When I is 0, you're making 10. When I is 1, you're going to make it 10 plus 2, so 12. When I is 2, you're going to make it 10 plus 2 times 2, 14. So you keep going.
Oh yeah, step stays constant.
Makes sense? We also illustrated on that init array that you can change the elements inside the array, right? Does that make sense? Now, imagine that in here, I do this. What happens? Do I change the array outside or not? I got a reference to that object, I got a reference to that array. I change, right, to a different reference. So now what I'm modifying is a different array, just as if it was a different object. I don't actually change anything. This will actually print a bunch of zeros. Because by doing this, I lost the reference to that original array, and now I'm modifying some other array that I created. Does that idea make sense? So let me undo it. So we can change the elements inside the array. We cannot change the array, right? Or the variable that we cannot change the reference to the array, and we cannot grow our array. Normally, we do stuff to each element in the array, right? Like this. If you look at this, we are iterating. Our for loop iterates over I, right? The indices inside the array, but what we really wanted is the elements in the array, right? And so in our expressions, we need to use ARR of I, right? Java has a nicer way to just go through all the elements in the array. So I can do for int elem, or whatever variable you want, colon and this just iterates over the elements in the array. Does that make sense?
So on this case, what's the length of our array?
Why would I care?
How is
Just go through all the elements in the array. Why do I need to know the length? I needed to know it if I'm iterating over 0, 1, 2, 3, but if I'm just going through the elements, I don't care what the length is. If I care, I can go ask for the length and do things, but if I don't, then I don't.
That's just a special for loop, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Guess I forgot about it. It's probably the last lesson.
May not, I don't know when did you study Java or C# or something, but it may not have been there. It's relatively new. It's like maybe Java 7.
That just means that you go through all of them until it ends.
Yes.
Okay, but and you add and you.
But now your for loop variable gets assigned the elements, not the numbers, not the indices. Does that make sense? How can we find the minimum element in an array?
The minimum value element.
Yes,
Minimum
not the index.
position.
No, the minimum position is 0, right? The minimum value, right? The minimum element in an array.
You know, you have to do a sort or use a for loop that.
We don't have to do a sort.
You
In
have
fact,
to do
doing
a
a sort would actually modify the array, which may not be what you want.
You use a for loop where you just assign a value to like the lowest value so far, and then you compare it.
Yes, and so
Go through all the elements.
we can assign the minimum value, I'm calling it the min, to be the first element in the array, ARR of 0. And then in my for loop, I only need to start at 1. I don't need to compare 0 again, right? And then I check if the current element, ARR of I, is less than the current minimum, the min, then the min is now going to be ARR of I. So at the end, I have the minimum element in the array. Does this make sense? This is basically a standard algorithm that you will do hundreds and hundreds of times.
So we say the minute array is 0. Does that mean it has one place or has 0 places? Because we say we start counting from 0. So
What do you mean one place
so
or
we
0
initialize
places?
at the very beginning.
The min is the element number 0, which is the first element in the array.
Okay, so that's not saying, before we did with 10, it said it gave us 10 zeros, so it said there's 10 spaces in this array.
What I'm doing is initializing it to the space, to the value in the first space.
Okay. Okay, I see now. So
The
you're saying
first space
the first
is
space is 0.
This first space is space number 0.
Okay.
So I'm assigning it to, I'm initializing the minimum, saying the minimum is the first element in the array. And then check the second one. Oh, is the second one smaller than, oh, the minimum is the second one.
Okay. But if you would have like n demand equals new, whatever, then it would have been however many spaces.
Yes, and it will probably not work for
Yes,
this.
I was trying to clarify.
Yep. Can I use a for each loop for this?
Not if you start at the min
Yeah.
0.
I mean, I can, right? It's not that big of a deal.
I guess you'd just be checking the first one twice.
Exactly. So I can do for int lm.
It'll equal itself, and then you'll.
Exactly. It works except that I check the first element twice, right? Which is kind of wasteful. On the other hand, it works. Does that idea make sense? Cool.
So what's the benefit of doing one over the other?
What's the benefit of doing this over this? Sorry? What is the benefit? Look at them.
One of
Which
them
one
has
looks
4
prettier?
lines and the other has 3.
Which one looks prettier?
I like the first one. I don't like the second one.
Which one is simpler?
Second one.
Oh, no, wait, I like the second one.
Wait. This?
The first one you wrote or the first one?
I like the first one you wrote.
Look at this. Which one has shorter? Let me actually do this so that they're exactly the same. Which one is shorter? Which one has less stuff?
Oh, the one that was,
The first one there seems more succinct, but.
Yes, the first one is shorter, right? It's harder to get lost. You're just going through every element, right? It's simpler. You may not get used to it, right? If you have done the other one, then the other one looks prettier because you're used to it. But the first one is objectively simpler. Does that make sense? On the other hand, in the first one is less flexible. For example, in this particular case, I'm actually having to check element number 0 again, even though I know that I don't need it. Right? So in this particular case, the second one would allow me to skip element number 0. In general, try to use the first way because there's less chances of messing yourself up. Unless you can't, and then. Make sense? Now let's do it with apples. Can we calculate the maximum element instead of the minimum one?
Array length.
You're volunteering. You're volunteering to go do it. Thank you. Go. Go.
same.
Volunteer. Good. It is almost the same, right?
Yeah.
I
All right.
basically need to change the name of a variable probably, and then change that.
I'm
Yes,
done.
actually, that would work. That would be nice. Right click on the min and right click on the one either one, but the one above.
Where's your mouse? Oh, you don't have a mouse.
No, it's a Mac. Sorry, never mind. I'll right click. Every freaking computer right clicks differently. And then I
I don't
can
know
do
how to right-click.
refactor, rename.
Alright, I'm done with this semester. That was my final project.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, actually Macs are really, really, really weird. Their default stuff doesn't make any sense. You right click by hitting it with 4 fingers while you stand on 1 foot and hop or something like that.
Being different.
I set up mine to right click on the thingy. Does this make sense? let's do other stuff. What can we do? Actually,
Well, it's like different methods with arrays too.
there aren't that many methods. Arrays don't really have. They only have length, and that's it. You remembered your linear algebra. Bless you.
Yeah, I just started learning it.
Okay. The dot product of two vectors is multiplying the corresponding elements and then adding them. Right? So, how do we implement this? We do int dot p equals 0, and then we need to go just to be paranoid. Just in case they send us something with different length. What we need to do is add the multiplication, the product of the corresponding elements, right? So A1
A1 dot
of I times A2 of I. So we could do
Show my characters. Okay. Sorry, I'm still typing.
no. Let me call here R1. I'm gonna make let me do this so I don't. Let me change how we print arrays. Instead of print line, we're gonna print element and add a comma to it, and then at the end. So that would actually print it as one line. That way we don't get confused. And yes, I'm a horrible person. We are printing an extra comma at the end. Actually, that's not true. I messed something up, right? Why? Oh,
You should be good since
I did it on this one rather than on this one. Not very cool.
You got the comma down there too.
Never mind. I will learn to change the right functions.
Can you scroll back down to your word column?
the main.
So we're printing, and now we need to do this. Actually, let me do this so I can actually read what did I modify the right one? No. So now we print 10, 12, 14 up to 28, 1 through 10, and now the dot product is going to be 10 plus 2 times 12, which is 24, plus 3 times 14, which is 42. 4 times 16 is 64, right? And so you keep adding, and I'm going to trust the computer that the answer is 1210. You can probably do something very simple and then verify the answer. Whoa! So we've got 10 plus 24, which is 34. Yay! What other things can we do with arrays? Let's do this.
Copy array.
We could do copy array. We actually, one that may not be bad is just like init array. But instead of init array, let's do make array. Where I'm going to create an array of this many elements and initialize it. Does that make sense? So what I'm going to return is an array. Go to create an array, initialize it, and return it. So I need, how do I create an array? Well, how many elements do I need my array to be?
Yes, going to be number of elements.
No elements, right?
Yeah.
And so how do I create an array of that many elements? How do I create an array? New, right? Oops, this one doesn't take this. Does this make sense? Now, how can I initialize it the same way that init array does? Copy the for loop, or what can I do? Call init array. Does this make sense?
So if you don't give any lower value, it's going to be array of 0.
What do you mean you don't give it any lower value? You have to give it a lower value. Java doesn't let you call a method without passing parameters, right? If you pass 0, then it's going to be 0. But you can't just not pass things. Java is a strongly typed language. It will not let you call it with the wrong number of parameters. So we could actually do something like this. Isn't this cool? I could have an array of objects, right? So I could have an array of points, for example, and things like that. Or given that arrays are objects themselves, I could have an array of arrays. Does that idea make sense? That's basically a matrix in math. And it's a multi-dimensional array. It has 2 dimensions, right? And you could have arrays of arrays of arrays of arrays, and then you have 17 dimensions. Correct me if I'm wrong. In middle school somewhere, you talk about matrices and vectors, right? You at least get introduced, you know what they are. You don't use them much, but you kind of know what they are,
A long time
right?
ago, but we did like matrix multiplication when I was like
Yeah.
15 or something, you know.
Yeah, good. So, we are gonna do that just for fun, but
I don't remember. I remember when you multiply the matrices, it's like the opposite of what you would expect. It's like it's not like the first versus the last at first. It's like the
it's that one goes horizontally and the other one goes vertically.
yeah, that's it. That was a long time ago.
Let's
And I don't know how to multiply 3-dimensional matrices. I have no idea.
let's make one that will create a matrix, right? An array of arrays. And I'm gonna start at low and keep going, right? How can I create an array of arrays?
You need a nested for loop.
Yeah, but first, right? First thing that I create is this, right?
Okay.
New Oh, I need a. Never mind. This might even work.
What about the first box?
Sorry?
It wasn't have no length within the 10 of length. You only need
Well,
one.
let's see if this would work. Let's see if this compiles. I didn't verify that it's compiling and that I'm not doing something dumb. I am doing something dumb. No, I need. Oh, it's the other way around. Okay. Basically, I can only specify one dimension, right? And the first one is gonna be my row or my column.
IJ. Row it. The first one row.
So, rows.
Now hold on a second, when you only specify one dimension, you said that when you make an array, you set to a certain length, you can't change that length later.
Yes.
Isn't that what you're doing now?
No. What I'm doing is creating an array of size rows, right? Where each one of its elements is what?
Is an array.
It's an array. Of what dimensionality? I don't know.
So you just
That I
haven't
can-
declared yet. You haven't declared the length of the array yet.
I have declared the length of the outer array, not the length of the inner array.
Okay.
Because the array is going to contain arrays. And each one of those arrays actually could be of different length. So I need to do for int I equals 0, I less than rows plus I. First thing that I need to do is
Okay, so you need to create a new one for each column.
does this make sense? And now I can do horrible things. Let me do first this so we can do stuff.
So do you always have to make a method to print your matrix, or could you just do system.out_print and then whatever that method is?
I cannot just print the matrix directly.
Okay.
It will print horrible stuff. Like if I, instead of doing print array, right? Let me delete these guys for now. Instead of doing print array ARR1, I just do system out print line ARR1.
Yeah.
I think this will print horribly. Maybe now it prints nicely. It used to print horrible. Yeah, it prints horrible thing. Prints, I'm an array and here's my memory address,
Oh, okay.
which not very
It
good.
doesn't seem intuitive based on everything else we've done, though. Why is the arrays different?
They're not different. The default for an object is to print as manure. The default printing for an object is to print as basically the memory address.
Okay.
Except a string, right? You can print
Well,
print line as string.
some objects make themselves print nicely, right? Like strings, actually points, right? So some of the things that we have seen print themselves nicely, but they don't have to. And arrays don't, because Java is a piece of manure.
So we always have to create like a print method in order to display our arrays?
Yes, if you want to
If you want to display your
print them. You could just cut and paste for loops and things like that, but it's a lot easier to create a method, right? We'll see later how to create generic methods, but. And Java is a very low magic language. Other languages allow you to do a lot more magic. Java doesn't, kind of on purpose. So in something like, even I think in C#, you can add methods to the array class. Even though it is a standard library thing, you cannot do any of those fancy things in Java. Or operator overloading or something like that. So in C++, you can define your things that look really nice syntactically. In Java, no, they have to look like method calls and be ugly. Um, so we can do this, and then this will print a bunch of zeros.
We never created a front matrix.
We did. Maybe it doesn't do anything useful, but we doesn't do anything useful, but we did create it. It didn't complain. Yeah, there it is. I mean, hey. Let's do it without, right? Let's do for what are my elements? They are arrays of ints, right? What can I do to print them? Wouldn't it be nice if I had a function that prints arrays of ints?
Don't you have to use a nested for loop for the print function also?
Yes-ish.
Yes.
It is not obvious, but what does print array do? Does a for loop.
Oh, okay.
So it's just not an obvious nested for loop. There is a nested for loop in there.
All right. So you're not calling print element, you're calling print array.
I'm calling print array. Yes.
So the syntax for the colon, so it says all the elements inside.
For each, I'm calling call the element, right?
Yeah.
This name,
Okay.
I tend to call it elem, and the type of it is this thing.
Okay.
All the elements in this collection, right? In this array.
Okay.
So in that case, each one of my elements is an array int.
Okay.
Depends on what you prefer. You can either do explicit nested for loops or do these kinds of things and never actually show it as a nested for loop, right? In Java, there are no matrices. There is arrays of arrays, right? And so in here, I could do into this row. Let me take away a minute of your life if you don't mind. I could actually initialize here, right? So do matrix of row of call equals something like low plus 2 or row times columns times step plus call times step. I may be wrong, but we don't have much time. Since I'm doing it with 1, 1, that will probably do 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yay!
So this we consider like a two-dimensional.
It is a two-dimensional array, except that in Java we don't really have two-dimensional arrays. We have arrays of arrays.
Could you make like a three-dimensional?
You can, yes. 3D array? Sorta, kinda. In Java, you have arrays of arrays, which means that I just did something horrible there. I have a 3D array containing, right, the outer dimension has 2, but those 2 guys are actually different sizes. So this is really not quite a 3D array. And something like Fortran forces you to have a 3D matrix as opposed to an array of arrays. In Java, you can have arrays of elements, and those elements could be arrays, could be arrays of arrays, could be arrays of points, and a point may contain arrays of other things, and until you get really confused. And that is fairly common. Cool. We will go over this on Monday again.